little penance for having left you so soon, that I need to come back. And I've told Sue multiple times I would love to contribute anything and everything I can to Vermont and to the VSBA. So thank you for having me. I want to kick off with a question here for conversation, but let me just first mention I've got three areas for us to have a conversation. If you know me well, that's my style. This work is about a conversation and talking with each other, learning together, thinking things through. I think that's really critical. So I wanted us to talk about how do we balance support and accountability, and specifically, what are our duties on a corporate nonprofit board? Maybe how does that differ from a local school board? Because we all come with the local school board context, and generally a new association board member thinks in terms of, well, it's kind of like a school board and we've got a superintendent and we do this, and then we realize that metaphor only goes so far. The state association board is vastly different than a local school board. While good governance is good governance, and we'll talk about that as we go along, I want you to be thinking about, how is service on the state association board vastly different in your mind than on your local school board? And how do we balance our duties, particularly of loyalty, care, and obedience that the law makes very explicit in every state? How do we balance our duties with the executive director's duties? Is there any overlap, or is it important to know the distinguishing between the two? And then let's look at the school board standards adopted this last year by the state of Vermont. How might this inform thinking about your role on the VSBA board? Again, different than a local school board, but good governance is good governance. And so part of that with the standards is the first standard is all about what are the board's priorities? What are the governance priorities? And it doesn't seem to matter where I go, and whether I'm working with a local school board or other types of boards, that boards, we tend to struggle on clear and agreed priorities. So I'll be curious how you articulate your priorities as a board. Hopefully there's some time as we wrap up a couple of areas that I've been focusing my concentration the last 6 months or so, working effectively as a team. How do we communicate as a leader? And how does that look and sound and feel differently than not communicating as a leader? Very closely, almost hand in glove, is how do we build trust? And hopefully you'll hear me say at least one more time. What I'm learning is in order to receive trust, we have to give trust. And so that's where I thought we would go. I've given you a little bit of time to think, and somebody speak up here. What does it mean to you to serve on a corporate nonprofit board? What does that mean? I'm good with a pregnant pause, and I'm also good with calling on people. But what does it mean to serve on a corporate nonprofit board? What do you think of? Neil's scratching his beard.
Well, communication is different, I think.
Oh,
I think when you're working with people that you know in your community and you've worked on your board, you may be more uh, able to say things that you might hesitate to say on the Vermont VSBA board. You don't know these people. You're learning who they are, some of these people have vast more experience than I do, so they know the vocabulary better. They know the people, they've been working together for longer periods of time, so they feel more comfortable. So I spend a lot more time listening rather than speaking, which is unusual because I'm the first one to speak. But it's just a different, your communication may be a little bit different.
That's good, Linda. I appreciate that. So communication is different on a state association board than a local school board. What else? What do you think about when you think about service on a corporate nonprofit board like the VSBA board? Sure, Michael.
I think of it as setting priorities for the organization, ensuring that we stay on mission, and um, financial oversight to make sure we stay financially stable.
Those are good points. You don't meet nearly as often, so that relates to what Linda was saying about communication. You don't know each other as well as you tend to know your local school board members, and you probably never could know each other as well as a local board, whether it's a school board or some other type of board. Does anything else come to mind as here's important, or maybe if you're new to the board or you've been on the VSBA board for a while, a little bit of, well, I used to think it was like this, and now I'm thinking it may be more like this. Gaston has a virtual hand up.
Yeah, so what I think about is that the rules of engagement are very different. On a local school board, you've got open meeting laws, you've got all sorts of rules and regulations that you have to abide by. And it's been interesting because I know in the past we've had, FOIA requests and open meeting law requests. And because we are a nonprofit, very different from a local board, I don't exactly remember, what the issue was, but we didn't have to do that because we're different. So that's what I think. Over.
Those are really good points. You're not a governmental entity or an extension of government. You are a private organization and not subject to public disclosure, open meeting laws. Mark put a
That was going to be my point. We're a different legal structure. We followed different part of the state statute.
Is anything, just curiously, I won't belabor this, but anything that you're wondering about as it comes to that distinction as a corporate nonprofit board, particularly if you're a new board member, that other board members could fill in the blanks a little bit, some of the uniqueness or differences, and something just maybe a veteran member might say, for the good of the group. I was looking at Neil and he put his hand up.
Yeah. I will say, the primary difference for me, we were all chosen, elected to sort of serve in this position as representatives of the communities or the broader region that we came from. But I guess the way that I view my service on the board is to make sure that the organization VSBA continues, right? And so my primary focus is making sure, that we're financially viable, stable, but also that I'm not doing anything that actually jeopardizes the existence of VSBA, the organization.
Great segue. You had included in your board packet fiduciary duties of serving on a nonprofit board. And these three have existed in common law. They're well documented in case law. Most states have them in statutes. I know we do here. I don't recall specifically if Vermont has this in statute, but it does tend to be a common thing that's brought up in legal cases. These three duties of care, loyalty, and obedience. I think it's important as local school board members, and sometimes I know your supervisory unions in particular, you might have representatives from one town and representatives from another, and you've got to come together for the common good, that both a delegate and a trustee is a representative. When we first join a local board, often we think of ourselves like a delegate. We're there to represent our town. I was working with a board just this last Monday that's 5 different towns that had been consolidated. And there was one brand new board member with an agenda to defend the preservation of her elementary school with 58 students. And common issues, right? Vermont's not all that unique or different in many of the people ways of other states around the country. But that distinction between thinking ourselves as a delegate, if you've ever been a part of the political process, a precinct committee person for whichever party, you know, you elect people to be delegates and then you expect them to go vote the way they were told. Sometimes we get on a local board that way with people that have expectation we're going to vote the way they tell us. But a lot of times, as Neil was getting to here, when you serve on a state association board and you come as a representative of a region, it's a learning curve that we have to naturally process, that we're not on the state association board only to represent our district or our supervisory union or even our region. We're there to act on in the best interest of the VSBA in this case. And so these things that have been very time tested, this duty of care, that your board of directors has that responsibility to ensure that there is a strategic plan, there's a strategic framework for the work that you're doing, that you're mitigating risks or managing risk to the best of your ability, and that you're looking for opportunities for the organization to thrive, for it to move forward, but taking intentional steps to advance the organization's mission and goals. The responsibility of the board of directors is to ensure that the VSBA's mission and goals are being fulfilled. And that becomes very important. This duty of loyalty, it really stands out again when there's a little variance between what might be in the best interest of your local district, right? Or even in your local region versus what's in the best interest of all the school boards across the state of Vermont. And so if we think of ourselves as a delegate, we're just going to show up and our mind is already made up. We know how we're going to vote. We're going to vote the way that our region has told us, or in our best understanding of what the region would want us to do. But if we think of ourselves as not only a director, but a trustee, a fiduciary agent for the VSBA, then we realize the way we deliberate and vote is going to be in the best interest of the organization. The handout that you had was created by an organization out of New York, and so there's a reference there to New York law and having in particular a written code or a conflict of interest policy. Sometimes we have a conflict of interest. And just like on a local school board, on the state association board, we may have to recuse ourselves. In some cases, we just recuse ourselves from the vote, but it has a perception piece to it where, and generally speaking, and I believe your bylaws would be the same, it's up to the individual to disclose a potential conflict of interest and also to sort of choose that threshold of, you know, maybe I shouldn't even be in the room for this conversation because my presence could influence people inappropriately, or maybe I should disclose my conflict and not participate in the deliberation and the vote. Or maybe it's just I can say what's on my mind, but I should not vote in this. And the individual, each of us has to kind of assess ethically what is my level of conflict of interest and what is the perception of conflict of interest. Would anyone add something to that? Sue's the attorney, and I know there's at least one other on the call, or maybe two others that I can see. What would you add to that responsibility, disclosing a conflict of interest just for the good of the group?
I would just add that the VSBA has its own policy about conflict of interest and is very consistent with what you have already said, Phil.
So that's there. It's known, and new members have access to that policy. Then there's this slightly more challenging areas at time, the duty of obedience. those words were off-putting the first few times I saw them. They might be off-putting to you. I don't know. But the duty of obedience, I don't know, just goes against my freedom or libertarian grain. The nonprofit board member has to ensure that the organization complies with applicable laws, any kinds of regulations, and very importantly, as Sue just mentioned, policy. That duty of obedience means we're ensuring that the organization is following its own constitution, bylaws, and policy, and that board members have to take care to not engage in anything that's outside of the scope or outside of those boundaries. You know, on your local school board, you're generally not found criminally or civilly liable as long as you're acting in good faith and in consistent practices on best practices for your school district. We get ourselves in jeopardy, and some school board members do become sued across the country successfully when they've acted independently or separately from their official duties. I think it's very important to bring that over as well into the state association board work, that we have to take care that we're not acting independently. Something that's not either been requested by the executive director in her role and her duties, or requested by the board as a whole. And sometimes that can involve things like taking unofficial polls or reaching out and engaging with people in conversations that like we think that we're meaning well, we're wanting to get opinions, but it might be something working against stated positions or policies that have been adopted by the organization. That becomes very important as well. So I wanted to use the standards as a bit of a backdrop, again, recognizing that serving on a state association board is a little bit like a local school board, but yet completely different. This principle of good governance and governance priorities in the board standards as developed and as adopted, this comes forward and it begins to be very important. That not only how you develop your priorities, but that the board is spending time throughout the year, at least annually, measuring your progress on the priorities. And I would say in your case, very importantly, evaluating the executive director based on the progress of priorities of the organization, these things that have been formally stated. And using that as a substantial opportunity to just ensure that the priorities of the VSBA are progressing. So putting it out to the group, any of you, and it'd be great if it was a new board member, but how would you identify, or Melanie, I don't think we've met. I don't remember. Have we met before? You're muted right now, but I'm trying. Yeah.
Sure. I was on the VSBA board, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago for about maybe 2 years.
Okay.
And so now I'm back. So
You're back. So Melanie, how would you identify, or how would you answer this question? What are the priorities of the VSBA board?
specifically, or I mean, I know that we have we voted our annual meeting on a whole list of priorities, and I think
Legislative priorities.
right. And I mean, I guess my impression is that those tend to be the priorities of the VSBA board. The secondary part, I guess, is to make sure that school boards are supported across the state when it comes to training resources and recruitment. I know has been a big push lately. So I think those would be the two driving forces.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of glad I put you on the spot, although I know it's not nice, but I appreciate that. Sonia, I know we got to meet a time or two, at least lots of phone calls and stuff last year. What would you add to what Melanie said there about priorities of the VSBA?
I definitely think that Melanie hit a lot of them. I think the other things that the VSBA can do is really serve as a support for school boards with their model policies, with their superintendent search, superintendent evaluation. And I think that having the VSBA be there as a support is really helpful for school boards. And I know when I was the chair, it was super helpful to me to be able to reach out to the VSBA when I needed. I know our policy committee uses the model policies very regularly. And so I know those things are super important to our board.
But thank you for that. And love to hear from at least 2 or 3 more people, just because this is so important. Having a shared understanding of what your priorities are gives you that ability to assess, are we making progress? And again, fulfilling those critical duties of a nonprofit board, to know that you're moving the priorities of the organization forward or not. We have to know, first of all, what are our priorities? And then how do we measure our progress on these priorities? Anyone else? What would you add, Mark?
Well, we also have the strategic plan monitoring tool, which is at the end of our packet for tonight. It's a good way to break down into categories and then what we're hoping to do and what is being done to achieve those goals.
Jim?
Yeah, I think, we kind of look at it in a couple of different layers. The first, I don't know whether it's really been brought up, but the beliefs vision statement that we have is sort of, that's the big picture, what we're trying to accomplish. Because you get something like resolutions, and that's probably, over 100 items, so that starts to get a little bit granular. But the belief in vision statement that vision statement that we agreed on, I think is, sort of the old, like the North Star to look for.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Very memorable day in June a couple years ago. Some of us left there with a gift of COVID. So memorable day, but the board worked really hard on belief statements and vision and kind of overall direction. So that's good. You have a published document that says, as Jim said, here's our North Star. Someone else add to that. How would you describe the priorities of the VSBA to your neighbors and friends? Barbara?
Well, I think that the process of developing the resolutions and then voting on them is a key element to how the VSBA keeps its priorities dynamic and responsive to what's going on. I'm new on the board, and one of the things that I'd like to accomplish is to have our school board, which has never really been active legislatively, come up with a resolution this year. and the process and the reviewing basically what needs to be done or what needs there are and how we can influence that, I think is a very important part of the way we do business the way we work at VSBA.
And this is a very prominent live topic, I'm sure, because you're in legislative session. So this is top of mind for folks. I wanted to give President Diaz-Smith last word on this topic, but maybe someone else you would add how you describe the priorities of the VSBA. Whether you're new or you've been on the board a few years, either way.
I guess there's Linda. Go, Linda.
I think as ordinary people from a small town and where we are in the world right now, there is a bit of a tendency to look negatively at any legislative body, because we're so stuck within our own little world sometimes that it is very difficult to, when you're talking to somebody on the street about the VSBA and what they do, because they don't even know what their own board does. So sometimes, you're really marketing somebody's role, or you're saying, well, I'm brand new on the VSBA board. Well, what is it? It's the Vermont State Board Association. Well, what do? They work with school boards, and trying to work on, for us, we worked hard with them. They helped us a lot with our policies. But there are people that are just ordinary people that don't really feel the importance of a body of people, because they don't even know if they trust our own school boards because of where we are right now. And so sometimes it is difficult and it is sort of marketing when you think about it, because we all think of marketing as something really terrible, but it really is not. If you're doing it because you feel passionate about something, it is something good. It can be something good. So the first time I was on the VSBA, I came with a gentleman who had been on forever, and a really nice guy, who had a passion about the VSBA. So that's where I became that, to say that I'll do it again, because it is a really good group of people who want to do well by their school boards and Vermont and for the children. So to me, it's more of trying to, right now I'm struggling because there's another woman and I who are Rutland County, and I haven't even gotten around to sending out a message to Rutland County school boards to say who I am, because there is so much going on, and what this has done for me tonight is to say, okay, back up. And they've put some stuff out there, and maybe it's time for you to send out a message to the Rutland County school boards just to say, here I am. And is there anything that as part of the VSBA, is there anything we can do for you?
This is a very important part of member engagement and your opportunity as a representative to the VSBA board. Let me underscore something you're saying there, Linda, is if we're going to be an effective board member, first of all, we have to believe in the VSBA, and we need to be able to articulate a vision and a purpose. This is who the VSBA is, and this is what they do. It becomes very important that we have sort of this elevator speech that in 30 seconds or so, we could say, well, here are the priorities of the VSBA. We support school boards, local school boards across the state through policy, through legislative collaboration, and advocacy for public education, whatever that elevator speech would be. But then again, that also becomes a part of how you evaluate your progress and the performance of the executive director. Flor, help me out here. Last.
I wanted to say that this is great conversation, because it really helps us figure out where all our members are and gives us information for our retreat besides our next meeting with you. Phil, and I just wanted to say that, I think that there is some understanding from everybody that we operate by bylaws, that we have that includes our vision, our mission, and our beliefs. And I think that, there's an understanding that we have 11 regions, but after everybody was talking, I was thinking about something that you used to tell us when you would come to our boards. We needed to understand how our students doing in 2 sentences. And then I'm thinking about, how is our organization doing in a little elevator speech, like you were saying. And the strategic plan really is what informs, to me, a lot of the things that we're doing, plus our advocacy work. I think the advocacy work, Sue was just in Vermont Edition the other day, in order for her to do her job, we need to have clarity as a board. We don't need to always agree, but we can have that diversity of thought and agree on our priorities and come to consensus on a direction, whether it's a resolution, and understand the work of our different committees, right? And be able to have a respect for our executive committee, have a respect for the legislation committee that is, just is going to be a year and a half now, Neil. I don't know, a year and a couple of months old. And so I think this has been really helpful for everybody to understand their priorities. And it looks like we can talk a little bit more about also conflict of interest and make sure that everybody knows where to find the policy, and we can just paste it on the chat for now too.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
I
good.
have to say.
Yep, I'll put it in
That's
the,
good.
I'll copy it and paste it into the chat, and all the board members have a manual that you've been given for the VSBA board, and the policies are in that manual. And if anyone doesn't have it, please let us know.
So let's try to wrap this up quickly. I know you have a full agenda, and I do want to touch on just two critical elements of working effectively as a team. One of the things is, and I got this from a breakfast with a state senator just a few months ago, and he was talking about the chaos that was happening in the U.S. House with having a speaker and, off and on. And anyway, what Senator said was, anybody can scream and holler, no, 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 and what's wrong. But it's a whole other level of leadership to actually do something good. And I appreciated that context and backdrop. You've heard the adage, any fool can criticize, and most fools do. That violates the next topic I want to bring up of communicating as a leader just a little bit. But I think we have to be careful that we're a part of something. And when we're on a corporate board like the VSBA board, we're a leader in the association. We're seen by our peers and those around us as someone that's held to a little higher level of accountability and responsibility. And so we need to be mindful and thoughtful about how we communicate with others, what we present, how we present it. And, we desperately need more civil discourse in our world, in our society. And I want to believe that that starts with us individually, choosing not to be someone that's, pounding the table and screaming about what we disagree with, but actually leading in a positive direction. And just closing with the subject of trust, I've gone back through and recently listened on Audible to Stephen M. R. Covey's book, Smart Trust. And I read this a few years back, but it's really been coming alive to me, the idea that some people are just by nature, and, it's not confession time, but some people by nature are just distrusting. We had a series of times across the country in the last 20 years where we've seen batches of new school board members that were sort of the verify and then trust first, show me and then I'll believe it. Fortunately, most of us are more of the variety of let's trust and then verify. Verifying is important because verifying is where we demonstrate accountability for our role. But I would just encourage you to be open to trusting each other, trusting your executive director, your staff, assuming positive intent, people would say, but importantly, expecting and following through with that positive intent and building a network of trust. Again, if we are going to be trustworthy, we have to extend trust for others to be willing to trust us. And I would just encourage you to lead with trust first, and then follow up and verify. It's not blind trust. It's a very smart trust. Trust first, reach out to people, and be the one to take a risk, because I think that's going to be very key for us now and into the future of working effectively with other people, whether it's on the state association board or in other roles that we find ourselves. We have to be gracious enough to extend the benefit of the doubt, extend trust, and then approach people and talk things through. So let me just end with this. If you do have a challenge or problem with a fellow board member, one of the staff members, some situation, find the opportunity to sit and talk that through. Ideally in person, and if you can't be in person, do it by Zoom. So thank you, Flor and Sue. I hope this was helpful to you and to the ongoing growth and development of a new board.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for being with us tonight and for staying on time. This was great, and we have some stuff to talk about at our next meeting, and we'll be communicating with you to plan for March. Thank you for joining us today, Phil. Say hi to
Thank
your
you, Flor.
family.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay.
Goodbye.
So we're gonna move to number 3, VHI appointment. I'm gonna let Sue lead us, and then I'll.
Do you want
Okay.
me to turn the recording off for a minute, Sue, or?
Yes, that would be fine. That would be a good idea.
So the VSBA board has unanimously appointed Andrew Haas to be a representative at the VHI board starting March 1st. And we want to take the opportunity also to thank Gio for serving in this position for a few years. All right. Now let's move to the report of the task force on collaboration to benefit all students. We are excited. I wrote a little piece, so I'm just going to look at this for a minute. We're excited for the work of the task force. As an association, we want to emphasize that this work and report is for growth, understanding, and collaboration. And we want to make sure that accountability is not used as a scary term in the work that we're going to do together. We want to build a relationship with all stakeholders and respect and trust. And we need this in order to learn from the report and to grow from the report. And this will help us create support system and ensure that each student reaches its full potential through quality education and opportunities, regardless of their circumstances. And it is important that we hold this space for this conversation to happen, and that we do that with a growth mindset. So we're hoping that, you all agree. The committee had its first meeting, and we're grateful for Claire Wool that agreed to chair the committee, and also for Dr. Megan Roy that agreed to write the report. And we're very lucky to have Sandra be our staff and liaison and support person to do this work with the task force. So she's a system thinker, really well organized, and got us going. So Sandra, can you update us from the first meeting?
Sure, be happy to. So as Flor mentioned, the task force held its initial meeting on January 29th, and we had 8 of 11 members in attendance, 3 of whom are in this call tonight. So good to see you again. The group heard a bit of background information about how this charge came about, how the task force came about through resolution. And the group reviewed the project plan, looked at a timeline, and then started collecting some themes. So I wanted to highlight for you some of the themes that emerged in that very first meeting were around data, roles and responsibilities, communication, and staffing and leadership. And again, always focusing on what the group would like to see from the system. What would we like the system to do and look like in order to benefit all students? So we're really keeping that forward-thinking mindset. The group has since developed a meeting schedule once a month through September, with October being a month when the report will be wrapped up, and then also aligning that with the timing of our annual meeting so we can come back and update all of our members on the work that's been done by the task force. And our next meeting is next week, the 21st.
Thank you, Sandra. And I would be remiss to say that our own Mark Cohen is also part of this committee, and his district brought the resolution, and he's participating on yet another hat for us. So now let's move to number 5. Unless there's questions, sorry. Is there any questions about the task force? Give you guys a minute. I don't see any hands. Okay, so legislative update. The legislative committee met on February 1st to consider 2 bills, and the committee minutes are part of your packet. So if there's any questions, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to give it to Sue and Cara to give us a legislative update of craziness in the State House. Hard to keep up.
Yes, there is a lot happening. I'm going to cover H 850, which I'm sure you all know what that one's about. And Kara's going to cover the rest of the bills. So H 850 is the bill that is amending Act 127 of 2022. It's replacing the transition mechanism, which was the 5% cap, with a new mechanism to help school districts adapt to the new system for pupil weighting. And that new mechanism is for every 1% decrease in the percent change in the district's share of statewide weighted pupil count, the district receives a 1 cent decrease to its equalized property tax rate. And we sent information, we've been sending updates out to all school board members in the state about this. And we sent the latest information, that showed how that was impacting each district the end of last week, and that hasn't changed. There are 45 districts that qualify for some number of cents off of their tax rate under this new transition mechanism. The bill proposes also to allow school districts to cancel a district vote on an article or articles for their annual district vote and hold a vote at a later date. And then it provides some information that if a district does that, it must amend the warning to specify any votes that were canceled and move the date of the vote for those articles to a date on or before April 15th, 2024. There is also an appropriation in the bill from the general fund to the Secretary of State in fiscal year 24 for the purpose of offsetting election costs that school districts have if they do decide to postpone their annual meeting or some portion of their annual meeting. I wanted to make sure that you saw the guidance that VSBA put out on Monday with the Secretary of State's office and the Vermont Superintendents Association. There's a cover memo that's sort of an introduction, and then there's a memo that is specific to school boards and superintendents about what your options are and how you go about doing it if your board does want to make a change. And then there's a specific memo for the school district clerks about how they handle the ballots. So we knew that there was clarity needed sooner rather than later. It's very unusual to issue guidance before a statute is enacted, but with the timing with town meeting coming up so quickly, we thought it was very prudent to work with the Secretary of State's office and get that out as soon as we could. So that went out on Monday. And I can update you on the progress of the bill. Right before this meeting, I was listening to the House floor because they were debating it. And I got a text a little while after you started your meeting from Chair Kornheiser of the House Ways and Means Committee saying that it passed all stages of the House, which means that they suspended their rules. And normally it would take, a couple of 3 days at least for the passage of the bill, but they suspended all the rules and passed it today. So that means that it's now going to be moving to the Senate. I think that is everything I have as far as an update goes. We're committed to keeping you all and the rest of every single school board member in the state updated as this moves forward so that you know what's going on. And so please be on the lookout for emails with that information. Are there any questions on this one?
Did it pass unanimously?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Thank you.
Be surprised if it was unanimous in the entire House, but we'll see.
Tara?
Thank you. So do you have any idea, or if you've heard from districts about how many are starting to postpone their votes, or like going back to their budget, or rethinking things, and how many are just moving forward with what they've proposed?
I'd be kind of interested to hear what from all of you about that. I've heard from a few that are going back and re-examining their budgets. And I've also heard from a few that say they're just going to go forward as proposed. So, and I think I had that same question. I was on Vermont Edition yesterday with the Secretary of State, and there was a similar question. And it's really, as all of you know, it's very dependent on each individual school board's budget. So great question. I would love to know more.
Yeah, I can tell you in our region, I know Essex Westford has moved forward with what they warned. Champlain Valley, it sounds like has moved forward with what they warned. At the MMU meeting on Monday night, our finance committee decided to remove money from the budget. The finance committee approved our budget. Our overall board did not approve our budget. So we are starting to navigate special meetings, working with our town clerks, and moving forward with another, getting everything redone.
I know that's a lot. Did you find the guidance at all helpful, Tara?
To be honest, we're muddling through it. There's been a lot of like back and forth phone calls, and because, right, like being volunteers, it's kind of hard to like drop what some of us are doing professionally to then pick up what we're doing as a volunteer to keep moving on, knowing that we have to move very quickly on this. So we're doing our best, and I found it to be helpful when I read through it, and I'm going to continue to push the guidance.
Thank you. I see Neil has his hand up.
Yeah, Tara's suite was just slightly before, and then.
Oh, sorry.
And Suzanne, you're on top.
No worries, Neil could have gone, but we aren't, our town doesn't meet till Tuesday, so, but we're one of the, well, we lost the penny that we originally were going to be guaranteed, so now we're not even on the list anymore. So it'll be interesting to see what our town does, or the rest of the board does. But I have a kind of a parliamentary question, maybe, because we vote from the floor. So my thought was, if we do decide to change the budget, we can do that from the floor as an amended vote. But today, my superintendent thought that if it fails, we could recall the question and have another revote. It's never been done. Is that something that we can do after the vote has, they've ceased debate and we've had the vote? Can we recall that question to try to get it passed from the floor?
Are you talking about in the same meeting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd have to take a really close look at Robert's rules. I'm happy to do that and get back to you, Tara.
That would be great, because that was what my superintendent posed to me today. And I said, the last time it failed, it never happened. This was 7 years ago, just before I became chair. So I'm just curious if it did happen, could we go back to the question and re-amend it? So that was just
So your question is not whether you would revote the same budget that just failed, but you would go back and revise it during that same meeting and then vote on the revision?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Because we vote from the floor, so we already know that, and it has happened where we've actually added money to the budget, and they've taken money away from the town, but not from the school in the years past, but yeah.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you, Sue, for looking into it. Neil?
Sue, do you know, are there any timelines as to when we could vote to delay the vote? Could that vote be held up to literally like the day before town meeting?
That is a great question. There hasn't been any limitation put on it, so I think that it could. One of the things that we put in the guidance is that it probably could qualify as an emergency meeting if you need to hold an emergency meeting like right after the passage of the bill. The other thing that you should remember too is that Act 1, which is a law that passed last year and expires on July 1 of this year, already allows you to move your meeting. So you don't necessarily have to wait until this H 850 passes if you're thinking of moving your entire meeting.
I was just curious as to whether or not there was any requirement, if you're gonna postpone it, that you would need to do it X number of days before like town meeting day, or if there's no restriction, then that's fine. I just want to make sure like boards aren't meeting too late to have that discussion and decision, that there was no requirement that it needed to be X number of days before the regular voting date.
Yeah, I can check with the Secretary of State's office and see if they have a opinion about that, and certainly we could put that out, you know, in an email to people if you think that that's a common question.
I'm only curious as it relates to, I think a lot of us have February break coming up, where a lot of us may not be around, and I wasn't sure that if we said, we'll just get together after the break when everybody's back, if suddenly somebody's going to be like, well, you didn't give enough time because you needed to make that decision X number of days before. So
I will check that out. Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, our board discussed this last night. Our feeling was not to change course. The budget we put out was the budget we put out. The guidance seems like very confusing to voters. You know, ballots are already out there with our budget on it, telling people that we're not going to count their votes. Isn't a particularly message that I want to be pushing. Our feeling was, you know, the budget we put out was the budget we put out because we believed it was necessary. It wasn't padded. The tax rate increase is substantial. If the voters reject it, we'd rather get a clear, you know, just a clear vote it down, you know, and we'll proceed from there. That also avoids all the confusion around, you know, trying to follow all that guidance. It also, oddly enough, I think gives us more time to sort out what to do. Because we aren't under the April 15th deadline. We go to the regular revote timeline, which gives us a chance, for example, to wait until the legislature finally acts and we can predict a tax rate, which we can't right now. So we're gonna go ahead with the regular vote. And you know, and if people vote it down, they vote it down. We know how to handle that. So
Suzanne?
So our board, Monday night, trying to figure out what day today is, had almost the same conversation. Such a new board, they decided that since they felt they had developed a budget according to the first set of rules, and we were under the 5%, they were willing to take a chance that other people would change their proposed budgets and bring their numbers down, thereby bringing the yield up so that our tax rate would go down. They seem to be playing Russian roulette here, but that was their hopes and their desires. So they're going forward with the same budget and hoping that it passes.
So all districts within the GRCSU are not rewarning. We're staying with the budgets we put together. We have one district that is highly disadvantaged, and in fact, we've been saying Act 127 was going to create incredible havoc on this district since the first speaking of Act 127, and their budget is up 24%. If they had cut $3 million from their budget, it would have done literally nothing to their budget other than eviscerate their school. So it's really disappointing what Act 127 has done. Corey Valley is a disadvantaged district also, but we certainly are not in the position that the other district is. We cut $1.5 million from the Quarry Valley budget from January on, from the time the CLA came out on January 2nd to the time we approved the budget, and which in turn pushed our budget up, even though we had already approved a budget in December. So someone said Russian roulette. That's basically how we felt we were putting a budget together. I think the problem I have with this and the rewarning is that it's putting out a real mistrust to those in our communities about our budgets. And the fact that if you are a district that is not rewarding your budget, that you are not doing your due diligence for your residents and citizens, because there appears to be this misinformation out there slightly in the media that the reason we are being given this time to go back and rewarn is so that we will cut our budgets more. And I think that is the piece that is the most, it is going to be the piece that as board members that we're going to have to deal with. So the other piece I'm rather concerned about in this H850 or whatever it is the $500,000 that they appropriated in there. I find that and I'm speaking not as our district, not as the SU, but as a board member, I'm a little sickened by that. If you want to put $500,000 out, then allow us to use it in a manner that we can really use it in forward facing or front facing for students. But to appropriate $500,000 to rewarn budgets is sickening in my opinion. Thank you.
Barbara, and well, because I want to respect everybody's time too, but I think what some of you have started doing in the chat is great, because then we could have a record of, if you don't mind putting on the chat what your district is doing, that would be great too. Barbara, go ahead. It doesn't mean that you can't speak, please speak, but I think it would be great to have it written too.
I just wanted to mention that Catherine Sims, who's one of our regional representatives for our district and is on Ways and Means, came to our board meeting the other night, and I asked her about the possibility of getting more money into the ed fund from other sources, she said that they are considering it, and they're considering being able to raise the yield, but she said she can't promise, but there is that discussion going on too. I don't know if it's going to be within. I don't know. Have you heard, Sue or Tara or Cara? Have you heard about that?
About raising the yield?
Yeah, about finding other sources to put
Yes.
other general fund sources to put into the ed fund to
Yeah,
lower
well,
the tax rate.
or some money. We've asked, we've requested that. Floor testified with Amy Miner, who's the president of VSA last week, and what we've heard the chair of House Ways and Means say a couple of times is that they're looking at this sort of in 3 phases, that H850 is phase 1. Phase 2 is looking at the yield and ways that they can get it to be higher. And then phase 3 is really looking at the cost drivers in education and what coming up with some kind of plan to figure out how to address those.
That would be a longer term. The third
Yeah.
one would be the longer term thing, of course. Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so let's continue with the legislative update. Oh, Melanie, Mel?
Sorry, thank you. Is there any discussion at all around CLA at the legislative level, and just how that is being addressed, or I don't know, is it being considered at all as a driver for problematic taxing structures that are happening across the state, or is that kind of just
I
being
would say it's not being considered as a driver, because the Joint Fiscal Office has testified that it's not a driver, it's a equalization method. But we all know, we know what happens. And so I think that they are I've heard them say that they may take a look at the CLA. I don't think that's necessarily their top priority, but I have heard that mentioned at least by individual members.
Yeah, I have a quick concern about it and then I'll leave so we can move on. But two quick concerns. One is that I think that Act 127 was supposed to be working as an equalizer for districts, that were more disadvantaged with their student populations. So I'm wondering if this is almost like double dipping in that way. Like is CLA not as important now that we have this new weighted average? But my second is that, I feel a little bit like the CLA has gone unchecked. And while we should be looking, as Barbara said, for new revenue, instead we're just hitting our districts harder through the CLA without, I mean, if the whole state is undervalued, that means to me they're just looking to get more money from everybody. So, I guess that's my only point, is that CLA is not the right way to get more money into the ed fund, and it feels like that's how it's being used. So I'd love to see that discussion come up at some point, but that's all.
Can I just say one thing about Act 127? We talk about how it's supposed to be addressing disadvantaged and making us more on an equal playing field. But if budgets are shot down locally, you become disadvantaged because of that. It's not the driver that you think it is. If my budget is voted down and we have to go back and readdress our budget and cut more things, then we've become disadvantaged because of that. So it's not an equalizer, in my opinion.
And I think what I would say is that I think what Emily has been saying all along is that they're trying not to throw the baby with the water out, right? And I think I think our entire board believes in the principles of equity. So I think the mechanics and the yield are not in our favor right now. But I do feel like as a board, we understand that every district spending and capacity depends on the state as a whole. So as hard as that is, and we are scrambling, my district is scrambling too. We're trying to come up with pros and cons of moving the vote or not moving the vote. And this is by all means messy, and 2 weeks before town meeting, not even, is not what we as school boards need to be doing. So we will keep advocating for a higher yield. The CLA conversation is, until we start to invest in affordable housing and have more housing in the state, the CLA is not going to just fix itself by the value of houses either. So we have those systematic problems that need to be addressed too. But let's continue with this is a conversation worth having. If you guys have more input, by all means, please email us. I want to make sure that we get the rest of Sue on school construction, which is also real important, and then Kara.
Yes, Kara's going to take over from here.
Okay, so I know we only have about 10 minutes left. There are, as always, a lot of bills related to education. So I am going to focus on a few of the big ones and ones that I think are emerging as priority bills. So the first one in House Education is a committee bill that's still in draft form, kind of creating a school construction aid program. I'm not going to go into some of the details because they're really working on those particulars, but suffices to say this is a priority, and House Education anticipates moving forward with a school construction aid bill this session, and they are working to meet the crossover deadline, which means it will go through the House and then make its way over to the Senate. The other bill that the House Education Committee is focused on is H630. It's been called the BOCES bill. It's an act relating to boards of cooperative education services. This is Rebecca Holcomb's bill. And she really is encouraging or advocating for this bill because it creates the legal framework for these cooperative regional relationships. So she just wants to, it's not a mandate, it's not a requirement, it just builds out the structure, the legal structure, so that schools can take advantage of these cooperative arrangements. House Education has taken a lot of testimony on this bill, and it's definitely emerging as a priority bill. Moving over to the Senate, you all passed a resolution in October advocating for the ban of flavored tobacco products and e-liquids. That bill last year made it through the Senate and did not move on the House side. It is now this session making its way through the process on the House side. There have been several amendments to the bill, but nothing that really impacts our position on the bill. House Ways and Means last took testimony on the bill on February 8th. They've obviously been tied up with a lot of other issues, but we anticipate they'll take the bill back up when they're able. S55 is an act relating to authorizing public bodies to meet electronically under Vermont's open meeting law. We sent you a legislative alert on this bill today, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but suffices to say that it is the bill proposes to mandate hybrid meetings. You all have taken a position in your resolution that that is I wouldn't say contrary to that, but certainly you did not take a position on a mandate for hybrid meetings. And when we last spoke with you about this bill, there were a lot of concerns about that requirement. Moving on to what is happening in Senate Education. I see that Senator Gulick is on the call. She has introduced a bill S203, which is an act relating to the appointment of State Board of Education members. This bill proposes to create a new appointment process for State Board of Education members by allowing the governor 4 appointments, the Senate Committee on Committees 3 appointments, and the Speaker of the House 3 appointments. It's currently in Senate Education, and they have not taken a ton of testimony on this bill. Moving to the 2 literacy bills, S204 and S203. I won't go into great detail on those, but those are priority bills, and we have been in to testify on those bills, as have Vermont Superintendents Association and Vermont Principals Association. Oh, and I'm seeing that Senator Gulick is telling us in the chat that Senate Education is taking testimony on S203 on Friday. The Senate Education Committee is also considering a bill banning the use of cell phones in school, among other things. We testified in opposition to the bill in Senate Education a couple weeks ago. And actually, Commissioner of Health, Mark Levine, had some really good testimony on the bill today. So if you're interested, you can hop on to the Senate Education website and link on to their committee meetings. I thought he articulated our position, the VSBA position, really well. The last bill, and not least, is a career and technical education bill. This really gets at governance and funding. There was a companion bill in the House, and the House Education Committee took a bunch of testimony on that bill, but the Senate Education Committee is really going to take the lead on any CTE work this session. Of note, the bill proposes to base the tuition charged to a school district on the district's prior year FTE in the CTE center, and really increase that early exposure by requiring school districts to provide students in grades 6 through 8 with career enrichment and exposure, an annual visit, et cetera. And then it also gets at exposure for students in the 9th and 10th grade, and then brings up the statewide calendar again. So I am going to leave it at that so that we can continue with our agenda, but I'm always happy to answer questions. So anybody can also email me if you have questions outside of this meeting.
Thank you, Kara. Any questions for Kara? No. Okay. Seeing none, my iPad just locked up. I believe we're moving to the treasurer's report. Do I have that right? There we go. Yes, treasurer's report, second quarter.
Okay. Yes, so we finished the second quarter, remember our fiscal year end, June 30th, like the municipalities, and also that's December 31st. Things are looking good. We've, key things, we've got, all districts as members, and everybody has paid their dues nowadays. We're tracking reasonably well to budget. The most significant differences from the budget, you got some details on specific items in the notes that's included, but the places we're differing the most, one is that we are more active on superintendent searches, which is generally a good thing for us. So it's generating a bit more income at this point. That's a positive for us. The collective bargaining supports are always a little bit difficult to figure out on timing and all. We're once again, we've spent less than we expected at this point, but that's such an important thing that we're hoping that that we find plenty of places to provide that kind of support and make a difference in the negotiation process. Also, at this point, our compensation expenditures are a little bit behind budget, but generally we're in pretty good. We're in good shape. Things are positive. The balance sheet is looking good. The income statement's looking good at this point. Also wanted to report on the finance committee. The finance committee has met a few times. One thing, one key element of those discussions has been the investments. If you all remember, those of you who've been around for a bit, we had made the decision to take our restricted reserves, which are $425,000, and to put those into investments to earn a little bit more than we have historically. Just a very plain vanilla approach to using several mutual funds in a diversified portfolio for that $425,000. That's sort of our core restricted reserve amount. We invested what the finance committee decided to do was to invest that over time, just sort of work into it. So the first $100,000 was invested back in September. The next $100,000, the finance committee met and decided to invest in the various indices in December. And the finance committee is meeting in March with the expectation that we'll just continue that process with an additional $100,000. In the meantime, we have the benefit of the funds that are in that Vanguard fund that are not invested in the range of indices right now are in money market funds, which the government money market funds that are also yielding us a pretty good return right now. So I kind of look from, you can look at the end of the second quarter, 12/31. We hadn't yet started showing a significant amount of earnings from the investment portfolio, but as of the end of January, we're starting to show a positive impact from that. Other things, the finance committee, we took a look. We've got the responsibility of working with Sue and Carrie on reviewing the insurance for the organization. Took a look at the full set of insurance. We actually, considering recent circumstances, we did take a look at whether or not we might need any flood insurance. Ended up coming to the decision that, one, where we are is not in the floodplain, and we actually don't own the building. We own it as a part of the partnership. But the risk is what we decided is to take the steps of making sure that any equipment we have and all that could be at risk, we try to make some steps to make sure that things like servers and all are in places that are safer. But decided that that flood insurance wasn't necessary and was going to be difficult to find anyway. The other change that we made from previous years, considering the world nowadays, we decided to pony up and get cyber insurance, which at this point you'll see in the notes we were talking about a couple of different approaches. We decided, and Sue felt it made sense for us to get the full $2 million of coverage. It costs us about a little under $2,000 a year, but considering how much a cyber events can create in difficulties, some of our like my school district got hit and certainly would have cost a lot more without the right kind of insurance against. So we decided to do that, and that's about all I have. Any questions? Welcome to ask them.
Any questions for Jim? Besides, thanks to you, Jim, and the finance committee. You guys do a lot of work. Gaston.
Hey, thanks, Jim, for the report. I just wanted to, you were saying that your supervisory union or district was hit by, a cyber attack and stuff. So I guess the question is related to your comment. So it's more to Sue. And that is, do we, or does VSBA undergo, those tests that they do for cyber attacks to see how vulnerable your system is? And I'm not really sure what I'm talking about, other than I know at the NCSU, they're talking about, that sort of test being conducted on our servers to make sure that we, are protected. So have you ever heard of anything like that? Yeah, over.
Yeah, I've heard of that, Gaston, and I know that our insurance company has, requirements in order to insure us with this. So I think that's kind of what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, thanks. I was just wondering. Thanks, Jim.
And that's, I think, that's a really good point, which, when you do the cyber insurance, they're interested and they provide you typically with some of the support and suggestions on how to avoid them having claims. Yeah.
And Gaston, I would add to that is shared responsibility. And so far, you guys have done really good about not responding to Neil's messages, which now I inherited, and I keep getting emails from all of you guys that I'm asking for help. So that is a good exercise. Okay, so let's move to you did both, Jim, the treasurer and the finance committee.
Yep.
Committee report. So let's move into communications with our regions. Carrie?
Hi, everyone. With the regional communications this month, we sent you out February's regional representative sample email. And in the last 30 days, Addison, Bennington, Rutland, and Franklin Grand Isle have all sent out messages. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. The sample message that we currently have out there that you can still send one out is for February. It's the Board Appreciation Month, which is the most fun month to send an email out to everyone. Just a little plug there, because you're just saying thank you so much for your work, and not necessarily like giving them information or anything, just really giving a big pat on the back, which board members don't get enough. So I'm going to say that 4 out of our 11 regions haven't sent any messages this whole fiscal year. So if you're one of those 4, this is a great time to think about sending them. That's all I have.
I'll call you, Carrie.
Please do.
I'll call
Please
you.
do.
Yes,
if anyone if it's a technical issue, I'm glad to help any way I can.
I'll call you. I want to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Linda. Yeah. Okay. Let's move to our next item, which is the annual business meeting date.
Okay, so Flor, I thought it would be helpful if I asked Debbie Singeiser to explain the plans for our next annual conference, because that's really the reason why we're having the annual meeting at a different time. So Debbie, if you would please do that, and then I'll talk about the annual meeting date and time.
Sure. So last year in fall of 23, we did our very best to get as many board members to our annual conference as we could. And we came up just a little over 100 board members. And to put that into context, we have somewhere between 850 to 900 board members in our state. So it's a bit low. We do in our strategic plan monitoring tool have the goal of getting 400 board members to attend our annual conference. So we're still only at about 25% of where we want to be. What we did after that board meeting was we looked at the conference survey that every conference participant completed, or those, not everybody completed it, but those that did complete it, we looked at the survey results. We also sent out a survey in the weekly update to all board members, asking them for feedback about the annual conference and what are the obstacles that are in their way from that are inhibiting them from participating at the annual conference. And it really boils down to two things: duration and time of the week. I mean, as you know, because you're all board members, people have day jobs. So it's really difficult for board members to take 2 weekdays off. So the feedback that we got was shortening the conference and basically shortening the conference. So we, with the VSA, we have come up with a strategy that we're going to try out for fall of 24. And we're changing the format a bit so that we will be doing, it'll still be in October. The dates were set for October 24th and 25th, and that was set before even the 23 conference. But instead of having 2 full days, as we have in the past, we're going to have it start on the evening of the 24th, which is a Thursday. And we'll go all day, and we'll go hard all day on Friday, the 25th. It'll be a very full day of workshops. The place, the venue, we have also changed. We won't be at Lake Maury next year. We will be just for this year, and it doesn't mean this is where it's going to be for the rest in perpetuity, but we're going to try the Hilton Doubletree, the Doubletree at Hilton up in Burlington, for a variety of reasons. But the main reason was they were the only ones that had the space available for those dates. We did try to get closer to central Vermont. We looked at Killington, and they were already booked. So those are the big changes right now, both location and having this new format of a Thursday evening into an all-day Friday event. So why does this matter to the annual business meeting? Well, it's because we won't have time to do our business meeting during those 2 dates. So we had to decouple the business meeting, the VSBA business meeting, from the conference. So that's why we did ask the executive council for their blessing back in December, and they said, go ahead. We really had to book the Doubletree. So we had to ask for their permission. So that's why we have that on the agenda this evening.
Great, thank you, Debbie. So following up on that, the plan is to hold the business meeting via Zoom prior to the conference, like about a week prior to the conference. And we did put a message in the weekly update email last week with a survey to members to ask them their preference of October 17th or 18th, I believe it was. I'm just scrolling through my calendar here. Yes, 17th or 18th, which is the 17th is a Thursday, the 18th is a Friday. And we listed like 3 different times on each of those days. And we didn't get a lot of responses, which was disappointing. But from the responses that we did get, the winner was the 17th, Thursday, the 17th at 5 p.m. And we had offered, I think, 4 and 4:30 and maybe 5:30 or 6. So 5 o'clock on the 17th. Nobody really wanted to meet on Friday, the 18th. I guess people don't really want to do it on a Friday. So that's what we've gotten from the survey. And I think I would hand it back to you now, Flor, for any further discussion.
So like Debbie said, and Sue also, too, we met as an executive committee back in December to brainstorm a little bit about this. There is some precedent from other associations separating their delegate meeting, which is, that is sort of what takes most of the afternoon that day. And then we could allow more time to actually work on resolutions. And we were also thinking that that might be the place where we unveil our task force report too, and make sure that people, do some learning around resolutions too. And that's not completely defined yet, but that's one extra thing that I wanted to share with you guys. So what we would be looking for is making a motion to set our annual business meeting date to Thursday, October 17th at 5 p.m.
As a remote meeting.
As a remote meeting, yes.
So moved.
Thank you, Linda.
And this is Gaston. I'll second that. Over.
Thank you, Linda and Gaston. Any more discussion or questions? Wow. Linda?
I just have one question. Are we gonna try, or how will we try to get more legislators at the annual meeting this year? I brought that up, I think, on Monday's meeting too.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Linda. And yeah, we do want to get more legislators to the annual conference for sure. I want to let you know that we always do invite them, and all the state board members. And like last year, we had 1 or 2 legislators that aren't school board members. I think one that's not a school board member, and then 1 state board member, which was really disappointing. So we are going to double our efforts and try to think of some ways to make it more attractive to them. And interested if Martine has any ideas about how we could do that. I also see Tara's got her hand up.
Yeah, Tara.
Thanks. I am just wondering if there is an opportunity to reconsider the 5 p.m. time. Right, if this is the business meeting for everybody. I have school-age children. 5 p.m. is extremely difficult, especially when they're engaged in after-school sports, evening activities, and so on. So I'm just wondering if there could be any additional consideration to even bumping it an hour to 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Sue and Debbie, was 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock was one of the times that went out. No, and there was more.
More, I would say, I mean, it's really up to all of you. We only had 10 responses, so it was very few people. It was less than the number of people on this board.
Okay, so then, yes, there. Okay, unless there's objection, I'm gonna let Martine and Melanie speak first, and then we'll move back to that. Martine?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Sue's question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, and I'm sorry I'm not on video today. I just can't be, but I'm glad to be here. I'm really excited about these changes you're proposing. I think they will definitely bring in more legislators, and just by virtue of the location and the flexibility with the business meeting. So I really look forward to seeing how things sugar off, and I will certainly try to be active in getting more legislators to show up. And I can speak to other school board members who are also legislators, and maybe we can make a real concerted effort to get folks to come. Thanks.
Thank you, Martine. Melanie?
Yeah, it's funny Martine just said she was excited because I feel nervous that decoupling it from the conference means that we might have much less attendance in it. I really kind of enjoy that big public engagement that happens at the annual meeting when everybody's there. So I don't know. I guess it kind of saddens me a little bit that that's not happening. Um, and I guess the question is was that not a concern, or we think the hybrid's going to make up for that, or is it just absolutely impossible that there's no way we can do it?
I think that from my understanding, and I don't want to speak for Debbie and Sue too, but one of the things, from the feedback that they received, and Chelsea was part of this too, from the feedback that they received, what we're trying to do is get more people to come to the meeting. And this is, we're giving it a try, right? So we are taking a risk, doing things a little different and seeing if things sugar up differently for next year. And if this makes more people come, then we might consider it differently. But we also have been thinking a lot about how to make our delegate assembly more efficient and better run, and be able to not, we spend a lot of time just counting hands as opposed to having the conversation. And there's a lot of precedent of, sort of these meetings happening online too, and still being able to have a conversation. And it also would allow us to maybe break a little corner into the actual meeting in person, have time for our regions to get together and get to know each other within the represent. I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that we could, if we're willing to take a risk and make things just a little different this year. And if it doesn't work, we will take, we can always go back to how we did it before, right? This is just, is that okay? Just, okay.
I give you credit. Thank you. It takes a jump to make a change. I'm 73, I'm old, and I know how hard it is to change. So I have to say, thank you for trying it, because we're never going to get 100% of everybody thinking it's right. But thank you, Debbie. And that's a hard thing to jump to. And I appreciate the fact that you're trying something different. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, and it takes all of us. So thank you, everybody. And with that, Linda made a motion. Would you mind amending it to 6 p.m. if that's the pleasure of everybody? Could I get a show of thumbs if most of you would like to move it to 6? I don't know. That's not very parliamentarian, but yeah, it looks like most people are okay with 6. So would you, Linda, do you want to?
I would like to amend it.
Somebody wants to amend the motion to make it. Okay.
I would like to amend it to 6 p.m. Is
And
that enough?
Yeah, and I'll second that that change as well. Over.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of changing our annual business meeting date to October 17th remotely at 6 p.m., please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none. And Tara, I saw your hand a minute ago. Did you want to say something, or you're good? Okay, you're good. So back to Kara, strategic planning and monitoring report.
Okay.
Kara to go first.
Okay, great. I'll go first. VSBA staff worked with the Education Coalition to issue the first legislative report for the 2024 legislative session. Hopefully you've all read the report, and we're already working on the next report. VSBA also issued a legislative alert, and actually, since I wrote this, we've issued 2 after school on the After School and Education Fund, and then also on the Bill S55 on open meeting law. VSBA has also worked hard to communicate changes to the Act 127 transition mechanism that is now in H50. VSBA staff hosted a webinar on Monday on the legislative session, our advocacy work to date, and plans for the remainder of the session. And I'm going to hand this off to Debbie.
Thanks, Kara. So back in December before the holidays, the VSBA hosted a webinar called Get on Board, Pre-Board Candidate Training. We had 46 registrants, and this was the first time that we tried a webinar for members of the public. So this was unusual. This was different from our traditional webinars where we have mostly school board members and superintendents attend. So we really were marketing. Our target audience was members of the public who were curious about what it's like to run for school board, or what's it like to be a school board member. So we felt that was a good first try with 46 registrants. As you may know, that this webinar is part of a larger campaign by the same name, Get on Board, and includes a revamped webpage on our website that's called Filling Board Vacancies. And if you ever visited, or if you want to see it, there's a lot of new tools on that page for school board members to get the word out to the public about running for school board. We also have an unlocked page on the website called Get on Board. And that's for again, members of the public who want to know more about serving on their local school board and how to become a candidate. So the VSBA staff actually has seen on Front Porch Forum, posts, letters to the editor in different local papers, posts on different schools' social media sites, our logo, the Get on Board logo, as well as just a push to the public for getting people to run for school board. So we were encouraged by that. We will continue the campaign. We'll keep it open and running through town meeting day. So there's still time to recruit candidates, especially for those districts that elect from the floor, or those districts that don't elect their board members until after town meeting day. So anecdotally, we're getting lots of positive feedback from school board members about this campaign. And we look forward to seeing how it all pans out in the end. Thank you.
Carrie is next.
Hi, everyone, again. I'm going to highlight, you may have noticed in a new item in our weekly emails, once a month, we have a new section called Great Idea. This is a way for local districts to share something that's working for them, to share with other districts. Think about what you'd like to submit. We just had one last week, was the first one, I think, and it was budget videos that Barry and Montpelier Roxbury did that were really great. That and it also has a contact name and information. So if you like what they're doing and you want to do something like it, you have a way to contact them and get more information.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm gonna finish up here. I believe, I think Sandra has left. Her son had a hockey game tonight, so she's left the meeting a little bit early. So she won't be providing anything this month on the strategic plan update. I wanted to focus on February being School Board Appreciation Month, and Flor mentioned it earlier in the meeting. Hopefully you've seen our messages in the weekly email thanking school board members for all their hard work, and especially at this challenging time. Who knew that we were going to be in such a challenging time during School Board Appreciation Month? The team did an amazing job creating this laminated double-sided resource for school board members. It's got executive session on the front, and on the back is Robert's Rules information. And we've been receiving positive feedback from members, and we hope that you're going to find it useful too. If this resource has not arrived in your mail yet, please let us know, because you should have received it by now. And we do know that the socks are more appreciated probably, but unfortunately Darn Tough will no longer send free socks for us, and it's cost prohibitive for us to send a pair of Darn Tough socks to every single school board member in the state. So we're hoping to get Darn Tough back again someday, but we'll keep you posted on that. Let's see what else. We've been including this information in the weekly update multiple times, but I also want to make sure you know that the Vermont House is reading the school board recognition month resolution tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. So VSBA staff are going to be there, as well as Vice President Tara Sweet. Flora's unable to be there because she's out of the country right now. But we also have several legislators who serve as school board members who will be there. And we're hoping to get a photo of them after this resolution gets read. And if any of you are able to join us, we would really love to see you there. So tomorrow at 3 p.m. at the State House. And if you are going to come, please let us know so we can plan to meet up with you and make sure that we see you. And just the last thing that I wanted to say tonight is just how much I appreciate the exceptional team that we have at VSBA. I think we all have skills that really complement each other, and everyone is working together really well as a team. And, you know, there's examples all throughout the strategic plan monitoring tool of how that's happening. So thank you, VSBA team.
Thank you, Sue. So Gaston.
Yeah, sorry. So Sue, in looking at the, the stakeholder engagement activities and progress, Kingdom North is blank, and I'd like to correct that. Barbara and I did in fact send out an email for the task force, and both Laura and you, a number of people were on this, and although we didn't receive any messages back, Barbara and I did take the initiative to send that out. So I just want to make sure that we get that corrected. Over.
Oh, definitely. Yes. And
Thank you.
Carrie, thank you
Yes.
for letting us know about that, Gaston. And Carrie, I know, can hop in and make sure that you all know how to fill out the spreadsheet so that she knows that you've done it.
Yes,
Oh,
we
very
appreciate it
sorry, I
so
didn't
much.
do that.
We appreciate you so much for sending messages out. We really do. On the spreadsheet that's got the shared spreadsheet that has the emails on it, the second tab is the log. So, and if you could just put it on that log, then you or I will know it, and everyone else, and your other rep and everything. So that I appreciate that so much.
Okay, Martine. Yeah, I just wanted to, was really thankful that Sue shared her praise of her team, and I just kind of wanted to second that. I see the work that's being done in the State House, and I can't tell you how incredibly invaluable it is. And this team is so well respected, and just kudos to all of you, and thank you very much for all you do. I know that I ask you for a lot, and you're very helpful at any given moment. So yeah, we should give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martine. Oh, there you are. We get to see you too, and thank you for all you do too. All right. So I'm gonna, we were gonna do the NSB Equity Symposium, but I'm wondering, Sue, if it'd be better to finish with that? Is that okay with you guys? Let's finish with that, so then, and we're almost on the home stretch. So if we could do number 12 first, and the annual conference. So we were hoping to authorize Neil to attend the annual conference in New Orleans. And the reason being, he was already in the Beliefs and Resolutions appointed as Eastern Regional Eastern representative to the Beliefs and Resolutions, and he attended that part in DC. And also we don't budget a lot for this kind of stuff. Tara is coming as a voting delegate, and myself. My expenses are paid by National School Boards Association, and also Sue is not going to be able to attend this year because she has a much more important and needed trip. So we were hoping that the board would be okay with allowing Neil to come to the New Orleans
It's the
conference.
NSBA annual conference and.
Yeah, NSBA annual.
Yeah.
Just,
Do you need a
I,
motion? I make a
I thought
motion.
I'd added slightly, yeah, add an additional piece of info, which is now that, you know, from a budget perspective, being the old treasurer and, you know, the stick in the mud and everything, well, Floor is now on the NSBA board, which means they pay for her expenses, which means we're actually under budget anyway, so we have the money to send Neil. So,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
an FYI.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Linda, were you making a motion?
Yes, I move to send Neil to the board,
Right. The National School Boards.
the National School
Conference.
Board. Yes. I'll
And-
second.
Yeah. So second, Tara seconded.
Liz-
Thank you, Martina.
Tara
Although any-
Sweet. I'm sorry,
Tara
there's two
Sweet.
Taras.
Tara Sweet. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, and thank you, Neil, and thank you, everybody.
No,
All right,
thank you,
so-
board. Yeah, this is the last time that I will do this to you guys. It was not my intention to have to incur this expense when I signed up for this committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil, for the work. Okay, let's do the consent agenda, and we're gonna finish with celebration. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the minutes of December and January.
I'll move them.
Thank you,
Second?
Susie.
I second.
All right, don't, everybody second. So who was? I think Barbara, you were.
Okay. Was I
last.
first?
Okay, Suzanne moved them and you seconded.
Okay.
I know there were more of you, but any amendments or changes to the minutes? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes are passed. All right, so going back, Carrie, would you mind sharing your screen? Or you want me to do it? I appreciate
Nope,
you
I
can
got
do
it. Just one second.
Got it. Okay,
It's here.
okay, so we can go just like one by one, so
So,
the Sue. So Sue.
is everyone seeing my slide?
Yeah, we can see it. So Neil came from he was part of the beliefs and resolutions for the entire National School Boards Association. He came with us. Kara was part of the trip too, and Sue Ziflaski went to the Advocacy Institute and the Equity Symposium. Let's go to the next slide. This is how it started. That was first day, and you know, I love pictures. I'm just feeling that this should be a celebration for everybody. What you see here, this little slide, you can't see. I'm looking at moving my cursor like you can see it. That little picture down there under Neil and myself is the work that the Beliefs and Resolution Committee was doing, and that was one of our successes. It took 2 years. Neil really helped with this too, but now bodily harm is not, you know, is not going to be, we were not going to be advocating for bodily harm being each state deciding what it was, but going back to what federal law decides what it is. The resolutions process was really, it was really good, and we were able to come up with priorities this year and a document similar to the one that we handed our, that Kara and Debbie and Sandra worked for our association. Next slide. This is the Equity Symposium. The students at the center of it, and Alex Boyer, which is trying to get, I don't know where that ended, but he was an amazing presenter. Just a story of being resilient, you know, growing up homeless in London and just being able to, you know, still see life from a resilient point of view and understand that, you know, poverty is not a handicap for learning or education. Next slide.
this is part of the Equity Symposium too, and there were different presenters in I was trying to highlight what was around students. So create a youth advisory, establish a team of students representing your district, consult with your, a lot of us do it in Vermont already, implement youth-led initiatives and regular feedback mechanisms, setting systems for regular student feedback. So, and this is part of our Equity Symposiums, and you guys all met Christy standing there at Equity Symposium, and one of the presenters, she was talking about the story about one of her kids and navigating different schools and being a school board member and also working on the school. Next slide. This is the Advocacy Institute, and you can see Kara and Sue and myself, and they had different, and Kara and Sue, please jump in, right? We don't get a lot of the legislature or senators and representatives, but there were a few of them that they come, and you can see Regina talking to Senator Van Hollen, if I have that right, from Maryland. And then next slide. And this is us visiting our delegation. Sue and Kara included a little piece in our weekly update, outlining the priorities that we were advocating for. Next slide. Becca was the one that we got to see. And then just a thank you for the honor of representing all of you. And this is Sue, and you guys can tell what is that. You're always getting. It was a little Bernie. It was a Bernie's office. We didn't get to meet with him, but that's the closest we got to him. And the last slide, I added one if it made it to. This is the VSBA meeting live from Guatemala. That's my dad. That's a little ill, and that would have been my school. And it's still the same. So just to put things in perspective, I was trying to show some flowers, but they didn't come through the slides. That's it. Carrie. Okay.
Well, thank you for leading the meeting all the way from Guatemala, Flor.
So with that, new business, any new business that you guys are excited about or you should be looking at besides what is in our strategic plan? Sue and I have been working and, sort of having a working calendar for our meetings, so we will know what's coming up and for our next meetings. Consent agenda we did, new business, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. Kara, sweet.
Thank you, Kara.
I'll second.
And thank you, Suzanne. So with that, have a good evening, everybody. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and goodbye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sue. Thank you,
Carrie,
Neil.
is there a way for you to save the chat?